Hey guys! Stop doing this.
Love me for who I am.
Welcome back to Plots with a Twist,
where we discuss books.
Amongst other things. Oh my god, my eyes started blurring. Too much wine.
I know. And today, we are going to be discussing the top 5 books that we started but didn't finish reading for whatever reason.
All right, so let's get into it. Okay, you want to start?
No, you go first because I just closed my page by accident.
Okay. So, some of the reasons I stopped reading aren't necessarily negative.
Right.
It's not necessarily books I just didn't want to read or didn't want to finish, but
Some of mine are.
Some of them are. So the first one I wanted to mention is Manhattan Beach by Jennifer Egan, if that's how you say her name. So I started it, so that was one that was kind of like everywhere. Everybody was talking about, oh, it's about to be a movie soon, and oh, you need to read this. And this is probably towards the beginning of my leisure reading journey. So what was that, like 2016, 2017?
A few years ago.
Yeah, so I started reading it. It was on our book list, and I got it from the library, waited forever to get it, got it, and I was just like, huh?
Wasn't interested.
Yeah, so it's described kind of like a film noir type or a noir type book. So you kind of get that vibe, but it just wasn't interesting. Like it dragged and took forever to actually get to the point. And that was not one I was willing to get a library fee for. So I just was like, yeah. It could go back. Maybe I'll revisit and try it again. I don't even know what it's about. Like, to this day.
I have it. I'm going to read it eventually.
I don't know what it's about. Like, I read the synopsis, but the story, and I was a good ways in, and I never got to, like, the actual climax. I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't finish it. I don't know when, but I might revisit it. We'll see, but it's not one I'm like really like itching to get back into.
So my first book that I started to read but did not finish is Veronica Decides to Die by Paulo Coelho, however you say his name, the guy who wrote The Alchemist that everybody loves. The book was boring, didn't like it. Like I just couldn't, much like Kristen, read about almost halfway through, don't know what it was about, couldn't get into it, and I don't know, I just felt like it was just a really slow story. I just didn't enjoy it, and I stopped reading it. I own the book, so I could pick it back up and like finish it if I want to, but I probably won't. I'm not gonna lie. I know.
Okay, so the next one is Life of Pi by Jan Martel. I know.
How dare you?
I know. So when I started reading that, it was probably like, if I really want to put a timeline on it, probably like 10 years ago, 8, 9, 10 years, within that range, you know. And so it wasn't like, I think it was right before it was, like a couple of years before it was about to be a movie. So I was like, okay, but I started it, and at the time I just wasn't really reading a lot, and it was one of those that I knew
too much for you.
Right at the time, I wasn't like reading wasn't a habit for me. It wasn't something I was leaning on more leisurely, even for entertainment. I was leaning more on shows and movies, so it just got kind of put to the side, and I just didn't pick it back up. But from what I started, it was good, but I just didn't get to a point where it really opened up as a story. So I do plan to pick it back up in the future because I do own it. I actually own 2 copies of it. One of them is like one I got when I was like in London, London town. They had a book sale, and I just had to buy something. And this is before I knew I was going to be a bookie, so I was perceptive.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the other copy I got from like a bookstore. So yeah, I own 2 copies, so I'm gonna pick it up. So yeah, I'll read it someday.
I don't think I thought I owned that book, but I don't. I'm thinking of Kite Runner.
So you can't have my second copy though.
You're selfish. The next book that I picked up, didn't finish reading, is Dance of Dragons of the famed Game of Thrones series by George R.R. Martin. I know. So if I'm not mistaken, it's like the third or fourth book in the series. And what had happened was I was reading the book at the same time that the TV show was on, and at the time, what was going on in the book was happening in the show. But it was like, you know, a lot of stuff that's in the book is not in the show, and like people were alive that's in the book, but they're not in the show anymore, or vice versa. And it was confusing me. I was getting really confused, and just like it was taken away from the experience of both. So I just stopped. I said, I'm gonna put the book down and pick up the series again once the show is done. Obviously now the show is done, and I'll pick it up one day. But you know, those are some thick books. So I plan on reading it. I do own it, so I plan on reading it one day, finishing it one day. But yeah, that's one that I just like, not because it wasn't good or anything. I just, with the show and everything, I just wanted to focus on one thing, one storyline, and then come back to it. So yeah, I'll be reading that in the future soon enough.
So like I said, I had the first one. But okay, I try to buy them at Goodwill. And they only got like the short, fat ones.
Yeah, that's what I have. Like that's what I have, like the paperback short ones.
I don't care if it's a book I want to read. I will not buy the short, fat books.
Really?
Like,
yeah, get over
they just look so ugly to me. The little short wide books. No. Okay.
Because they're thick ass books.
So the next one I wanted to mention that I did not finish was Girlboss by Sophia Amoruso. So I picked that up at a time where I just had a reading lull. So I just wasn't reading anything at the time, and I was like, let me pick this up because I just need to continue reading. So I do that from time to time with, like, especially if it's a shorter book or a self-help book, I'll go ahead and pick it up and just try to fill a gap between books. But yeah, I guess a book came along that I wanted to read, so I went ahead and put that down, and my intention was to pick it back up, but I didn't. So it wasn't that it was
pick it back up. It's
right. It wasn't that it was a bad book. It's just at the time it was like, okay, here's my gap filler, and you're no longer needed.
Right.
So
that happens.
I actually have it on my desk at work, so it's one of those I could just read a few pages and finish it soon. So yeah, it had a lot of good tips, so I plan to read it and finish it one day.
Gotcha. Okay, so my next one is going to be Salvage the Bones by Jasmine Ward. I think that is her name. It was actually one of our book club picks last year sometime, and started reading it, and just the language that she uses, how she writes, it was just too much for me. And it was due back at the library, so I was like, I'm not gonna finish this, I'm not gonna read this, I'm not interested anymore. And gave it back. I just couldn't get in. I don't even want to say I couldn't get into the story, but it was just more so her writing style that I couldn't get into, to be honest.
Yeah,
sorry to anybody who actually liked that book, because I feel like that was one of those that was hyped up too.
Yeah, it was hyped up. It won awards, you know, literary awards. And I'm not going to take that away from the book because it was written in a way where I can see why it won those awards. But I feel like those were literary awards and the writing was very literary. So it's kind of like, I'm a regular person. I'm simple. I can't understand these similes, these metaphors.
Because Toni Morrison, not for nothing, like her books, she's one of the, you know,
literary authors.
Yeah, like she's like really important to the American literary canon, whatever. But her books are, even her language, how she writes wasn't that like,
yeah, it was
intense.
like,
I was like,
start the sentence with a metaphor, then I'm gonna bring in this simile and wrap it on up with the onomatopoeia. And it's like, what were you even talking about?
Yeah, it was a
like, what were you even saying?
I probably read like the first like 2 chapters,
and then the whole story was just like over the span of like 2 weeks, or 10 days, and I'm like, but it was a whole lot of nothing. Like, I forced myself to finish it so I didn't get the library fee. So, and I have her second book, I believe.
Oh, really?
I have Sing, Unburdened, Sing. I don't know if that's her second or third, but I'm scared to read it now. It's like,
if you own it, read it.
I am, but yeah. Okay. So, said that. So I'll say that one. So the fourth book that I did not finish was The Municipalist by Seth Fried. So again, last year I tried to start that in December, and I had a gap in reading, and I was trying to also get my Goodreads goal, and so I was like, oh, I have like this X amount of books left to get to my goal. Let me just pick this one up. It's like 200 some pages. I should be able to finish this in less than a week. Yeah, I just didn't finish. It just started in a way that you're supposed to understand this dynamic that's going on. But it's like, this is page 3. I don't know who these people are.
Yeah.
Like, y'all need to give me some information to understand why they have this, like, interaction. Because it's like, this guy, he's working for the government, and they do, like, cities. And then he gets this AI who's supposed to be his partner. And his AI just talking to him any kind of way. And I'm like, but you don't know him. Why are you being so mean? Like, I don't know. It just didn't draw me in enough for me to go ahead and finish it. I do own it, so I'll try to pick it back up because, like I said, it's like 200 something pages, so it shouldn't take too long. But it just wasn't enough of a draw in the beginning for me to go ahead and be like, okay, I'm going to finish this before the month. I think I ended up getting another library book, and I was like, okay, never mind. I'll just get it. Yeah.
Okay, so my next one is gonna be Homegoing.
That's my last one.
By Gyasi, however her name. Gyasi. That one I didn't really read too much of it. It was another book club pick that we were supposed to read last year, and I think that why did I stop reading that book? I feel like I started reading it and it wasn't like pulling me in, and it was already like past, like we try to read a certain books every month, and it was already past like the timeline of when we were supposed to have read it. It was too far gone, and I said, okay, I own it, so I said I'm gonna come back to it later. I know it's a book that has gotten a lot of praise, so I do want to read it. And I know Kristen said the content of it is very heavy, so that could be a reason, like, you know, to not finish it, but just, you know, that you might not want to
draw you in.
So I do own it, so I said I'm gonna read it eventually. But yeah, I had put that one down. I didn't finish it.
So that actually is my last book that I did not finish. Was Homegoing, and that sounds bad because it's like we said it's a book club book, but I mean, and I shouted out the members in our other video. And yes, y'all still don't finish, but we finish most of the time.
Most of the time.
So, but yeah, so I started and I got a good ways in the book. I actually, if I put in my progress on Goodreads, I was like 55% done.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, I didn't get that far.
But so I actually really liked the book. But it is very heavy. So the book layout is basically following the lineage of these two sisters. So one chapter is one sister, one chapter is the other sister. One chapter is that sister's child, the other chapter is the other sister's child. And then so on and so forth. As they, you know, progress and have children, those children have their own chapters, you know, whatever. So, and it follows one sister's lineage in Africa and one sister's lineage in America during time. And so Africa is facing colonization, America is facing slavery. So two things that our people have gone through that is kind of like, this is messed up.
Yeah.
This is messed up. This
It's
is
a
messed
lot
up.
to take
And
in at one time.
every chapter, like no sibling or no child like escaped without having some trauma that they experienced and then therefore passed down. And it's like traumatic chapter after chapter. So it kind of became a little bit much for me. So I got to a point where I was just like, and it is very lengthy. Each chapter, even though it's each person, is like a mini story. So it's still each chapter is very lengthy as well. And so it just got to a point where I was just like, I'm starting to be mad. I was starting to get like, I know we went through a lot, but it's like, geez. Yeah. So it just got to a point where I just had to put it down. And it is one I do want to finish because it's written well. It tells our stories very beautifully, even though our stories are laced in tragedy. So but the thing about us is that of course we continue to rise. So I think it gets to that eventually. I just didn't get there, but yeah, it was just too heavy at the time. So that's the last one I want to mention that I didn't finish, but I do definitely I own it. I plan to finish it.
So the last one I have that I didn't finish was Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin.
What?
I know. So, and shout out to my cousin Tanisha. I gave it to her to read and she finished it. Good for her. I started that book because I have read a couple of James Baldwin's fiction books, which I really, really enjoyed. I really like the way he tells stories and just the timing, you know, back in the day. But this is a nonfiction book full of essays. So Native Son is a book by Richard Wright, I believe. And so Notes of a Native Son is kind of like James Baldwin talking about his experience, different essays on his experiences being a black man in America and just, you know, just talking about different things. And he's a great writer, but for me, I don't think I was in the right mindset at the time that I was reading the book to kind of like take in all he was saying. And it was one of those books for me where I would read a page and I'd be like, wait, what? And I had to go back and read it because I didn't feel like I was understanding like what he was saying. And not because like the language he used was so like, I don't know the word I'm looking for. It was just, I don't know. I just wasn't in the right mindset to finish, to absorb the information, to absorb everything he was saying. So that's something that I do want to come back to and read again, if my cousin returns the book. But other than that, like it's not that it was a bad book or anything. I just wasn't in the right mind to finish. So that's something that I will pick up again and read again. But I think that's it for us. We did 5 books, right?
Yeah, 5 books.
So yeah, because normally we finish our books, guys. We do. We really do.
I forced myself.
Because I hate picking up a book.
And I keep bringing that up, but I finished it. I wanted to put that bag
bad.
down so bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, even Salvage the Bones, I was like, I'm going to finish it. I'm going to finish it. So sometimes I do force myself, but there's just certain circumstances that happen that creates, you know, me not finishing. And now I think, and then even in the times I've read the books, like now I'm at a place where I probably would have forced myself to finish some of these books that I've mentioned. But like if we're going back, 8, 9, 10 years, I was
remember the stuff
I was out on the streets. I'm like, oh, you want to go out?
I'm done with this book.
Boom. Gone. All right. Well,
thank you guys so much for watching. Keep coming back to our channel because we got lots of content coming for you guys. As always, like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. And we will see you next time.
bye.